This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
Hello and welcome to Pop Vultures, a pop culture podcast by the Straits Times. My name is Janlee, and as always, I'm joined by Yeo Sam Jo.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. How is everyone doing?
Sam Jo has a French accent right now because, of course, today we are talking about hate watching, and we are watching everybody's favorite show to hate, Emily in Paris. Yes. Okay, Sam Jo is making that sound because he had to watch all 10 episodes for this podcast, whereas I was like, I'm just going to watch 2. And then I didn't like it. And then Sam Jo was telling me how much he hated it. And then after he finished all 10 episodes, today he came and was like, I don't really hate it.
In fact, if I hate anything, it's myself for actually sitting through all 10 episodes.
Yeah,
Jen, you're a cop-out. I thought you were going to watch it with me.
No, I couldn't. I hate myself for loving you. That's basically what's happening to Sam Jo right now. And I didn't do that. So how about let's just dive right in. Sam Jo, you watch all 10 episodes. Why don't you just share some thoughts about EIP?
EIP, where do I even start? I think I'll start with this word, and for those of you who watch this show, you would get where I'm coming from. Ringard! Ringard! I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but that essentially is the French word that loosely translated means basic. And there's this one famous scene in the show where the French designer Pierre Cardin actually shouts at Emily after spotting like a little Eiffel Tower trinket on her studded handbag. And he looks at it, he's like, oh my goodness, this
You're so basic.
so basic. I'm not going to work with your marketing agency, you know.
Okay, anyway, just to intro everybody to this show in case anyone is like unaware of what EIP is.
Yeah.
Emily in Paris is about an American girl from Chicago who moves to Paris for a social media marketing job to work with this marketing agency because her boss basically, who was supposed to move to Paris, suddenly got pregnant and couldn't take the job for 1 year. So she basically is taking the job over for 1 year lah. It's all about like, her experiences living in Paris, her hot neighbor lah, everybody falls in love with her. She eat bread lah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And then she posts on social media and then she suddenly becomes an influencer. And it's like, can your life be any more perfect / basic / ringard? But okay, anyway, back to my point. We digress. But the first few episodes, I really found the show to be insufferable. I don't understand how something so vapid can be such a hit. And I say such a hit because, my hopes were really up, right? When the show first came out on Netflix, people were texting me, people that I met in person were telling me, making the effort. There was this ex-colleague of mine who's like 51 years old this year, if I'm not wrong. And he was raving about the show. I was like, wow, okay, if even you want to watch it, then this must be really good, right? So I watched it. I gave it a chance to watch it with some friends. And I was surprised that when I actually posted an IG story saying that I didn't like the show, quite a few people actually slid into my DMs to defend the show, Basically, they say that, okay, a lot of them say that, it's trashy, good, it's so bad, it's funny. But I don't know, I just legit found the script a little bit lacking in substance. My main thought that kept popping up in my mind as I watched it was, why are we celebrating mediocre scripts? Hashtag Darren Star, which Jen will elaborate on later.
Yes.
Shallow character development, hashtag Darren Star again. Cultural stereotypes.
Hashtag Darren Star.
Yeah, so I don't know. Some people say that it's harmless and the show is even like self-aware in many ways. How like, for example, how basic Emily is matches the fact that the show is a basic rom-com and chick lit TV in and of itself. But I don't know, I wouldn't give it so much credit. How about you, Jen, from the few episodes that you watched?
The thing is, it really is a hit because it has been on the top 10 Netflix list for super long since it started airing. It's been number 1, number 2, number 3. I've seen it in Singapore hitting the top of the charts. Yeah. It's now been overtaken by, of course, Blackpink Light Up the Sky.
Yes! Blackpink in your area.
Yes. Sam Jo and I were obsessed with Love Sick Girls the past week.
I've been looping it again.
But I had many problems with the show as I was watching the first 2 episodes of Emily in Paris. Firstly, Emily has a friend who is Chinese. I think she's a Chinese Korean kind of heritage.
Her mom is Korean, but she's from Shanghai. Allegedly.
Yeah, then she teaches this French kid's Chinese. And this character's name is called Mindy. And Mindy's Chinese is horrible. Horribly, truly unforgivably bad because the actress who plays Mindy is Korean, is totally Korean. And
right,
Ashley Park. She can't speak Chinese. I don't expect her to. I don't understand why they wrote the character to be a Chinese teacher.
Right.
When she obviously cannot handle the pronunciation of like proper Mandarin. Like, she's supposed to be from Shanghai. And guys, I've been to Shanghai, I've lived in China. This does not sound like Chinese.
Right, and in the later part of the show, you will see that she hangs out with her Chinese friends as well, and the accents are all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's really, really strange to watch that. And there's that one scene where Emily first bumps into Mindy in the park.
Yeah, in the park.
And she's basically a nanny in this show, right? And so
Yeah.
the kids bump into Emily, and she demands that the kids apologize
To Emily.
To Emily. And what does she say, Jen?
She says, 跟那个阿姨道歉.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? What?
And that's Jen already giving her a lot of credit because it was like almost unrecognizable. I wouldn't have known what she was saying if not for the subtitles.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they don't just hire her to teach English, because I don't think it's that rare for rich French kids to have like a proper English tutor, right? Because the character is established to have lived in America before, so she would be fluent, and she is very fluent in English. So it's
Right.
like super odd that they didn't just let her speak English and teach English.
Yeah.
But okay, I think a lot of the negative comments about the show, coming back to my thoughts about it, a lot of negative comments have focused on how unrealistic it is. Like, she's this low-level associate in a marketing agency, and for some reason, she always wears designer clothes. And also, like, she starts out this social media marketing job, and her Instagram account only has 48 followers.
Yes. I actually tracked it episode by episode. So, for some reason, she starts off the show with 48, right? Even though she's a pretty girl and
48 is
everything.
really not, like, you can be a random person with like 5 photos on Instagram and have more than 48 followers.
But when you look like Lily Collins, who plays the titular Emily...
You should immediately already have 1,000.
Yeah, who are we kidding? But never mind, okay? Let's just go with the illusion that she has 48 followers. But by the end of episode 1, which is like, her first week in Paris, suddenly she has 230 followers. Never mind, episode 4, she has 10.4k followers. Episode 5, 20,000 plus followers.
Yeah.
And by the end of the series, in episode 10, she has like over 25,000 followers.
And also, the show doesn't really understand about anything about social media, because when she had like 600 followers or something, or like maybe like 500 followers, she would get like 100 over comments, which if you actually understand social media, it rarely works that way. If a bunch of people following you are people that you don't know, are not your friends, they don't know you in real life, it is very unlikely that your engagement is that high.
Unless they are hate commenting.
Or they are bots. More
they're
likely
bots.
they are bots.
Yeah.
So,
So, if you're going to incorporate social media in a show and your protagonist is a social media expert,
then maybe you should do better with the social media aspect of the show. But
exactly.
anyway, I do feel that a lot of the vitriol directed at the show is in part because it's super silly. Like, nobody is making any pretensions about how unsilly it is. It's not a serious show. And I think that it's a bad year for this show. It's clearly been received on both ends of the spectrum. Like, some people love it, some people hate it. And I think it's because this year has been so nightmarish. Everybody has been stuck at home. Nobody is traveling to Paris. Like, no one, other than people who live in Paris themselves, nobody is traveling outside of their own homes and their own countries. And like, there's been racial tensions, there's political protests, climate change issues.
True.
And everybody is just in this like bad, stressful state. And here comes Emily in Paris, a fluffy show about nothing important. So some people would fall in love with it because it's like, it's so escapist, it's great. And then some people would find it totally vapid and shallow and not something that they are looking for at this juncture in life lah.
Right. And I think the latter was me initially, right? Because I was like, here we are, like, trying to just stay alive, and trying to get over and done with this pandemic. And there she is, like, waltzing around on, like, a cobblestone pavement, like,
in extremely unrealistic high heels, like extremely hard to walk in.
Yeah, and, snagging, like, a dream job and then, like, getting by with zero French, and you know how that is in Paris.
And also, like, the neighbor who lives right below her block is out of this world attractive. Like, it's so unrealistically hot. It makes me angry.
So I actually read this article where why people didn't like the show was also, because how it's reflective of that lazy millennial life, That how millennials like Emily in this case, right, are seen to just get by and have everything so easy.
With very little effort on her part.
Very little
I have to
effort.
say that a lot of things that Emily achieves are completely because she just fell into it. Like, she got this Paris job because her boss got pregnant and then the boss can't go. Which is also unrealistic because nobody sends a low-level associate when they are expecting a high-level associate at the job.
Yes, and one of the prerequisites being you have to speak French. So that just is not realistic. But I guess that is the whole point of the show. Is like it's meant to be unrealistic, and nothing bad can happen to her. Like spoiler alert, but later on in the show, like her boss tries to fire her, meaning the French boss, like Sylvie, who is like one of my favorite characters. And she tries to fire her, but apparently because the paperwork takes very long in Paris or in France, so she couldn't get fired.
Yeah, it's very, Yeah,
so this show is essentially quite frustrating to watch, but strangely also liberating at the same time.
It can be fun, over a glass of wine, and if you talk to your friends about how much you hate it, you can get really animated.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So is it like a phenomenon of like you loving to hate it and hating to love it, or hating to love it? You know what I mean? Like, what is that?
It's the hate watch phenomenon, I think.
More about hate watching soon, and we're going to bring in some other shows.
Now, if you're enjoying this episode of Pop Vultures so far, do find us on the Straits Times podcast channel, or you can find us at #PopVultures, that's one word. We have our own channel on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Omni. Some of our episodes are on YouTube as well, so check those out. Last week, we trash talk Mulan, lol, and basically like and rate us and subscribe to us. Now, back to our show. Let us continue with Emily in Paris and hate watching.
Hate watching. Just a little hate watching 101, right? So there's actually an official definition, or there are a couple of official definitions of hate watching out there. So essentially it means to watch a TV show or movie for the sake of the enjoyment that one gets from mocking or criticizing the show.
Yes.
And some will even say that, hate watching is when you watch that show because you suspect that you will definitely dislike it. So you're watching it for the purpose of being able to talk about how much you don't like the show. Which is essentially kind of what we did for this podcast, right?
Technically, yes. So I definitely hate watching. I really didn't enjoy myself. So like Emily in Paris is created by Darren Star, who is the creator of like actually a lot of shows, a lot of like very well received shows like Sex and the City, which was also like one of those shows that people love to hate. And like, was he also the creator of like Beverly Hills?
Beverly Hills 90210. He did Melrose Place. He did the recent one called Younger.
Yeah, a lot of this like teen or like women in the city type things, that's his jam, that's his type of thing. So a lot of stuff is done is very hate watchy, because I think a lot of stuff he does is basically fantastical. Like, the Paris in Emily in Paris doesn't actually look like Paris. Like, it's super clean and it's super beautiful and it's glamorous. And people who live in Paris will tell you that's not the case. It's like the New York in Sex and the City is super like glamorous and fun and parties, and it's all like great things and best city in the world, right? But actually people who live in New York would be like, actually it's kind of dirty and there's a lot of like puddles around and there's like potholes and like a lot of stuff is not great. Like,
there's always like a rose-tinted lens through which like Darren Star seems to portray his setting.
Yeah, and when you have that sort of fantastical element set in what looks like reality, right, then people will always find reasons to hate it because they would think that it's unrealistic. But I think my point is like, that is not the main reason why it is like Emily in Paris and shows like Sex and the City. It's sort of like, that's not the point of the show, right? The point of the show is to be a bit fantastical, is to be a bit oddly aspirational, I guess. Like people look at the Emily in Paris and they're like, oh, Paris is so beautiful. It's to make you feel buy into a certain dream. So I think that's okay. But I think the thing with hate watching that is very therapeutic, is very therapeutic, is tied to like how much we need to vent our negative energy onto something, and like how much you bond with other people when you have negative energy towards the same thing. It's like, how you become friends with someone when you both really, really dislike the same person?
Oh, right. Or the same thing. Yeah.
You bond over a hatred, right? And then it's...
Which doesn't sound very healthy on the surface, but...
It can lead to long-lasting friendships. I'm just saying. Like, you
Are you
can
speaking
find
from
out
experience,
that.
Jen?
Yeah, I'm sure I have friends like that. And it's also like axe throwing. You know that nowadays there's this popular activity where you throw axe.
Right. Like as was featured on Indian matchmaking. Where Aparna, threw the axe. And
Indian
then she
matchmaking, another show that some people hate watch.
True. Oh yes, that's a good one.
I think it's like the act of releasing negative energy onto something, venting, right? It can be very therapeutic because you might have a lot of legitimate anger at very, very real things in your life that you cannot change. Like maybe you hate your boss.
Right.
Like maybe you have issues with your mom. Maybe you have problems with your friends. Maybe
emotional baggage.
Yeah,
essentially.
just emotional baggage. Maybe your boyfriend cheated on you and you have nowhere to let that anger out. Then you watch Emily in Paris and you get all that anger out on Emily.
Right.
And also I think it's a way, to be honest, it's a way for us to feel superior about ourselves.
Oh,
Because
that's an insight.
we look at Emily and we're like, oh my god, Emily's so bad at her job. She has that lazy millennial stereotype which you talked about, right?
Yeah.
Like she just sort of falls into great things.
Right. She's such a thick American accent, she can never master French.
Yeah, and then she like goes to France without even bothering to learn French, and then you're like, God, she sucks.
Right,
and then you feel good about yourself because you're like, she sucks, which I don't suck. You know, like
Also, you think, but then you look at your life now, and then you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
No, it's true. So I think that is the flip side, right? That's the flip side that we're talking about. Like, on the one hand, we are rolling our eyes at her, but on the other hand, we are like giggling and like actually gawking, and like we are in awe of the life that she's leading. There's an element of envy there, you know?
Yeah, and also I think it's when we talk about hate watch shows, right? A lot of shows that I hate watch are very female centric and are very targeted at the female demographic. You look at stuff like reality TV shows like
Keeping Up with the
With the
Kardashians.
Kardashians, which is ending soon. Love is Blind. You know, all of these kind of shows are very targeted at the female demographic.
Right.
The female and I would say the gay demographic, lah. You know.
Right. Singapore Social was another
Singapore
one that
Social
people love
hate
to hate.
watch. I think because people tend to think that female-led shows or like shows that are targeted at the female demographic are vapid and shallow and it's like chick lit, you know. The whole term chick lit is a bit derogatory in the first place. Why is it that literature that women like to read is somehow less worthy? You get what I mean?
Right. Why is it that women's stories or their narratives are automatically like dismissed as less important or like more frivolous?
It's things like this that brings an extra layer of nuance to the hate watch, to the phenomenon of shows that are hate watch and shows that are sort of produced entirely for this purpose. Like, look at Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The Kardashians know that people hate them. They sort of play into that. And when we look at the Kardashians, it's like they are so privileged and so rich, but they have really done nothing super worthy to get to that point. So it's sort of like we're venting our anger at capitalism at the Kardashians, you know? So it's
You're right.
Yeah.
I do think it's anger at capitalism. Like, essentially, that's what Emily in Paris is also about, right? You know, she is such a symbol of that. And I think people are just like...
Of like consumerism and materialism and capitalism, which I guess a lot of people do buy into, and also we can't really get out of it. Like, we live in a capitalist society. There's very little we can do to change it. So it's sort of like our anger at the world. This has gone to a next level, I feel. But it is true that there's a lot of like psychological baggage that we carry around us, and we direct it onto shows that we watch. Like, culturally, I think that's something that we tend to do.
Yeah, and I also want to take it to another direction. But, you know, I read some articles online about hate watching, and they basically say that it's just kind of like what we talked about earlier. So about how when we hate watch something, we don't actually hate it. In fact, sometimes we claim that we hate it because we want to like cloak our disdain,
obsession with it.
Yeah, our apparent disdain for it is actually like, you know, a disguise for our deep-seated obsession with the show. It's kind of like to protect our street cred.
Yeah, definitely.
So a lot of shows that people say, oh yeah, you know, I can't be bothered with that show, or like I watched it, hated it, like, you know, and then we scoff at it. But I mean, I have to admit, like when I got to the end of Emily in Paris, I was
invested.
I was very invested in it, and like especially when I got to like episode 8 and 9, I was like, okay, I really need to know what happens with her and Gabrielle.
Yeah,
you know?
you're like, can she sleep with Gabrielle already? Like,
yeah. So, and I think that's why a lot of people actually, even though they tweeted that, you know, the show is so shallow and everything, but the fact is that I'm pretty sure more than half of them were lusting after Gabrielle. Or even Emily, I mean herself, like, you know, she has like the perfect eyebrows, and like she even has like
Lily Collins
solid
does
abs.
have the perfect eyebrows.
Yeah. So I don't know. What are some other shows that you like to hate watch, Jen?
Like to hate watch. I have to say that when HBO was airing Girls, which was sort of like the young Sex and the City, the way it was marketed, right? That's the Lena Dunham show. I definitely had a hate watch phase with that show. Eventually I trailed off and just stopped watching it, but I definitely had a hate watch phase with that show because it was very, very like, I think Lena Dunham at the start was really satirizing the whole idea of the millennial, the lazy millennial, right? The stereotype of the millennial who is very entitled and very arrogant and thinks they know everything. And it's actually quite interesting to watch that play out and to watch them sort of have to contend with the fact that they aren't as special as they think they are. And things that happen to them, you know. And actually, in the end, it became a show about like female friendship and how toxic, and at the same time, it can be very empowering. So it was like, there were good stuff in that show. It wasn't a perfect show, but there was good stuff in it.
Oh my god, Shoshana was my favorite.
I hated her.
Really? Yeah, so I want to ask you, because for me, I watch that show, but why did you hate watch it? What was the hate in there?
I think the characters are so obviously like millennial stereotypes. So that was something that I didn't respond super well to, even as I recognized that there was value in what she was trying to do. And also, I think there's a lot of stuff about Lena Dunham in the culture. Like, Lena Dunham as a person is sort of like very, very hated and very controversial because she says a lot of things, and like you can go find everything that Lena Dunham has been involved in, all the scandals. I think some of it is justified, a lot of it is not, but eventually I just feel like her person overpowered the show.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people couldn't. I remember now, a lot of the criticism was about how she would just have scenes of her having sex naked.
Yeah,
remember?
yeah. She was very into like showing her body,
Showing
and
her
her
body.
body was not the model type. Like she was never that type of body, and I think a lot of people didn't respond well to that, which
Yeah.
it wasn't really
In
my
retrospect,
concern.
it was a bit of a body shaming though.
There was a
going on.
lot of body shaming
Yeah.
going on with the show. I mean, guys, that's the show that gave us Adam Driver.
Oh,
Like,
that's true. That's
he
true.
came up on the scene because of girls.
Yeah.
So at the very least, we have to thank that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think with like shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and also things like Love is Blind and like Love Island, The Bachelor, you know, even Survivor, I would say that some people do hate watch reality TV shows, and that reality TV shows in a sense are engineered for the hate watch. They are engineered to be sensational, to make you like hate certain contestants. There's always a villain. There's always a villain in one of the stories. There's always like somebody who's wronged. There's always, especially in like love type competitions, right? Finding true love type competitions. There's always someone who's like maybe cheating, somebody who like has feelings for two people. Like, of course, we can say that a lot of this maybe is scripted or what, but I do think that it is engineered and edited in a way to rile up negative feelings in people so that they would have...
For sure.
Yeah,
so
they
that they
would
can
engage in it.
debate about it, they can tweet at each
Yes.
other, they can argue with
Yes.
each other about it.
So that it's
And
controversial.
You're right. And I think that it goes back to that adage, right? There's no such thing as bad press. In a
Yeah,
way.
sort of,
Because
yeah.
the more bad press there is, essentially your show just gets a lot of hits, and people will be like, very curious and start checking out your show.
Because even when a show is very good, then I think the discussion tends to skew towards a little bit more like almost academic in discussing why it's good, its themes. It becomes like literature, you know? It can be very good. It can be very good on social media, and everything when the show is very good, but it's not as like memeable, It's not like long Twitter threads where people fight with one another,
Yeah.
It doesn't blow up in the same way, and I think when you hate watch a show, it can really blow up in a social media kind of way.
True.
Because people are memeing it, people are retweeting it, people are angry, people are quoting, whatever.
Yeah.
So like
That's
I think-
exactly what happened with Emily in
That's
Paris.
exactly
Like
what happened with Emily
the
in
memes
Paris.
were making their rounds before a lot of
Yeah.
people watched it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why more people watched it. It's a cycle. It just brings in more people. People want mudslinging and like, I hate this show. People want that cat meme. You know that
Yes,
cat meme
yes, yes.
with the white lady?
Yeah, from Real Housewives, exactly.
Yeah, people want that meme. I hate it. No, I don't hate it. Gabriel is hot. No, Gabriel sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
people want
yeah.
that going ons.
Right. Celebrity Big Brother kind of drama there.
Yeah.
Like. So maybe the recipe for a good show and a successful show, if you want your ratings to go up, is really to make it a little bit bad. Like it can't be too perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure. I think that's the way to get social media traction, is to make your show so bad. It's like a car crash and you can't turn away from it.
It's like a train wreck. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think to get awards, you should probably, continue writing good things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe Emily in Paris will get an Emmy. You never
It
know.
might get a costume at me. We don't know.
Okay, on that note, I guess that's your dose of pop culture for this week. Let us know what you think about Emily in Paris. Like, is it très bien or is it merde, as they say in the show a lot?
Yeah, we're not going to translate it. We're not supposed
Yeah,
to.
we're not supposed to, but it was used in the show a lot, so y'all can go and find out for yourself. And tell us what you think about hate watching in general. Like, have you hate watched any show?
Yeah, what are the shows that you hate watch? What are some shows that you want us to hate watch? And then maybe we can discuss it on the show. So
Yeah, let us know. Okay, you can always write into us anytime, right? You can write into us at podcast@sph.com.sg.
you can write into me at janlee@sph.com.sg. You can also find me on my Instagram at janlee. Slide into my DMs.
You can also email me at yeosamjo@sph.com.sg or slide into my DMs on Instagram at Sam Jo in Paris. I'm kidding. Sam_Jomato.
Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, Emily in Paris is her handle. It's her Instagram handle.
Yeah.
That's why the show is called Emily in Paris.
I actually had a friend who changed his handle to his name in Pasir Ris just to spoof
That's
the
a
thing.
meme. That's a meme. Emily in Paris totally a meme. And that's all for this week. Till next time, he's Sam Jo.
She's Jen.
And this was
Pop Vultures.
Thank you for listening.
Au revoir.
That was an SPH podcast by the Straits Times. Find us on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts, or streaming on Google Home. Do feedback to us at podcast@sph.com.sg. You can also check out more podcasts on various topics at The Straits Times, The Business Times, and Money FM 89.3.